My name is Vaith Solanor. I am a commander of the Cathari Diplomatic Conclave, and I am writing this account so that every species in the galaxy understands what I witnessed. I need you to understand what the humans are, not what you think they are, not what we all assumed for 80 years, what they actually are. It began on the worst day in the history of my world. The Draelkin Dominion arrived without warning. One moment, our skies were clear and golden, the way they always are during the warm season. The next moment, a shadow stretched across the horizon, and when I looked up from my office in the communications tower, I saw their warships. Hundreds of them, then hundreds more. They kept coming until the sky itself seemed to close like a door. We are the Cathari. We are scholars, poets, scientists. We have existed for 11,000 years by being small, quiet, and useful to larger civilizations. We have no weapons. Our defense fleet is 12 unarmed research vessels that can barely outrun a cargo shuttle. We survive because we have never been worth the trouble of conquering, until the Draelkin decided we were. I will not describe what happened next in detail, because even now my hands shake when I try. I will say only this. They hit our cities from orbit, schools, hospitals, the great library of Solith, which held manuscripts older than most spacefaring species. They turned 9,000 years of poetry into ash in 14 minutes. And they did not even bother to tell us why. I sent our distress call to the Galactic Concord within the first hour. Their response arrived 6 hours later. It was 4 paragraphs long. It expressed deep concern. It proposed a committee to review the situation. It estimated a peacekeeping assessment could begin in 60 standard rotations. 60 rotations. We would be gone in 6. I stood in that broken communications tower with fires on the horizon and dust in my lungs, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not just fear. Rage. Absolute, blinding rage at a galaxy that had rules and procedures for everything except actually helping someone who was dying. So I did something desperate. I opened every single frequency our communication array could reach. Military bands, civilian channels, commercial frequencies, emergency wavelengths, ancient, deprecated codes that hadn't been used in centuries. I opened them all, and I screamed into every one of them. I sent our coordinates, our situation, our population counts. I sent images of the fires. I sent everything. Among the thousands of frequencies was one that our archives had flagged with a simple note. It read, Terran, purpose unknown, do not use. Nobody in our communication department knew what it was for. It had been logged decades ago, when the humans first joined the galactic community, offered as some kind of emergency protocol, and then forgotten because nobody took the humans seriously enough to remember. I used it anyway. I did not care anymore. I would have sent a message into a black hole if I thought it might echo back. For hours, there was nothing, just static, and the distant sound of our world ending. Then the static broke. An automated voice came through. It spoke in rough galactic common, with an accent I could not place. It said only, distress signal received. Confirm nature of emergency. I confirmed. I sent everything again. Fleet composition, civilian casualties, the location of our underground shelters where we had gathered the children. I sent it all with my hands shaking so badly I could barely operate the controls. There was a pause. Then a new voice came on. A live one. A human one. It was calm. Terrifyingly calm, the kind of calm that does not come from peace, but from a decision already made. Understood, the voice said. Hold position. Help is coming. I almost laughed. Help from the humans, the species that the rest of the galaxy treated like an amusing younger sibling at a formal dinner. They had a handful of patrol frigates, a few colony worlds, and a reputation for starting fistfights on space stations. What could they possibly send? I was about to learn that everything I knew about humanity was wrong. Everything the entire galaxy knew was wrong. I learned later what that frequency actually was. It was not a communication channel. It was a trigger. When humans first entered the galactic community 80 years ago, they looked around and they understood something that the rest of us refused to see. The Galactic Concord was not a system of justice. It was a system of convenience. It protected the powerful, managed the middling, and abandoned the weak. Species went extinct, while committees debated grammar in resolution drafts. The humans saw this clearly because they had seen it before in their own history, and they recognized the shape of it, like an old scar. So they did what humans apparently do. They prepared for the worst, and they told absolutely no one. Over 80 years, while the rest of us smiled politely at them and seated them at the back of every diplomatic gathering, they built something. Not a fleet, not a weapon, something much stranger and much more dangerous. They called it Protocol Lighthouse. It was a decentralized, volunteer-based rapid response network that spanned every human colony, outpost, station, and ship in the galaxy. The old emergency frequency was the activation key. When it was triggered by any alien species, it sent a cascading signal, not to governments, not to military command structures, but to civilians. Ordinary people, millions of them. Every registered human received a single message on their personal communicator. A location, a situation, a question. Someone needs help. Will you go? They built a system not to conquer, not to expand, not to dominate. They built a system to answer a stranger's cry for help, and they hid it from the rest of the galaxy because they knew, with the bone-deep certainty of a species that has been underestimated before, that if the Concord found out, it would be dismantled, debated, and buried in procedure until it was useless. 21 hours after my signal went out, I was underground. I had retreated to a shelter beneath the ruins of our capital with 400 survivors, most of them children. I was still broadcasting on repeat, more out of habit than hope. I had accepted that we were going to die down there. Then the Draelkin communications went wild. I could hear their chatter on the intercepted channels, confused orders, panicked voices, demands for clarification that nobody could provide. I accessed a damaged orbital sensor, expecting to see Concord peacekeepers arriving for an early review. What I saw instead stopped my heart. Ships, hundreds of them, then thousands. They poured out of faster-than-light travel in a ragged, staggered wave that stretched across our entire orbital zone. But they were not a fleet, not in any sense I understood. They were a swarm, an impossible, mismatched armada of every kind of vessel I had ever seen, and many I had not. Modified cargo freighters, with energy weapons attached to their hulls with what looked like welding marks still fresh. Mining barges the size of small moons, their asteroid-cracking equipment pointed forward like battering rams. Sleek, fast courier ships, darting between the larger vessels in patterns no military formation could explain, because they were not following a formation. They were improvising. Research vessels deploying experimental technology that had clearly never been tested in actual conditions. Colony ships, actual colony ships, arriving with their civilian populations still on board, because the volunteers who flew them did not have time to drop anyone off, and they came anyway. I stood in that ruined shelter, staring at a cracked display screen, and I felt tears running down my face for the first time in my adult life. They came in ships held together with welding wire and stubbornness. They came with children on board. They came knowing they might not survive, and they came fast. Faster than any military fleet I have ever seen mobilize, because they were not waiting for permission from anyone. They had already decided. The Draelkin had 1,200 purpose-built warships, crewed by professional soldiers. The humans had a chaotic, roaring tide of civilians who should not have stood a chance. They stood a chance. I listened to their communications because they were not even encrypted. They were talking on civilian networks, on public channels. They were calling each other by first names. They were making jokes. A woman whose ship was taking serious damage was laughing and telling someone named Marco that he still owed her 40 credits from a card game. A teenager, he could not have been older than 19, was broadcasting music from his cockpit while flying patterns that would have made a trained pilot dizzy. A retired freight captain named Elena Vasquez, age 67, took command of the entire response. Not because anyone appointed her, not because she held rank, because she started giving orders, and she was so loud, so certain, and so absolutely unwilling to accept any outcome except victory, that everyone simply listened. Her strategy was not elegant. It was the tactical equivalent of flipping a table and charging forward. But it worked, because the Draelkin had never encountered an enemy with no chain of command to disrupt, no flagship to target, and no concept of acceptable losses. The Draelkin commander broadcast a demand. He wanted to know which government had sent this fleet. He wanted an authority to negotiate with. Elena responded on open channels. Every species in range heard her. "We are not a fleet," she said. "We are not a government. We are just people who heard someone screaming. And you have 30 minutes to leave this system, or we will take apart every single one of your ships and use the pieces for spare parts. Your choice." She meant it. I could see the biological readouts from our sensors. Every human vessel registered the same readings. Elevated heart rates, massive adrenaline, neurological patterns consistent with extreme focus and determination. And not a single one of them showed fear. They showed only fury. The Draelkin Dominion, conquerors of 11 worlds, looked at this wall of angry civilians in welded-together ships, and for the first time in their imperial history, they turned around. They left. All of them. When it was over, the galaxy asked the question that mattered. It was not about the battle. It was about the numbers. Intelligence agencies across the Concord ran their analyses and reached the same conclusion within hours. Humanity's actual military, their official naval forces, had never moved. Not one ship. Not one soldier. What arrived at Cathari Prime was their civilians, their volunteers, their retired grandmothers and their teenage students and their cargo workers and their miners. Every species in the Concord keeps its warriors and its citizens separate. It is the basic structure of civilization. Those who fight and those who do not. Humanity does not have that division. There is no line. Every human being is, at any given moment, both a civilian and a warrior. They switch between the two, the way I switch between breathing and thinking. It costs them nothing. A human medic treated my injuries after the Draelkin withdrew. She was young, maybe 25 by their years. She had kind hands and tired eyes, and she worked with the gentle efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. I asked her why she came, why she risked her life for a species she had never met, on a world she had never visited, in a conflict that had nothing to do with her. She looked at me like the question confused her. "Got the ping," she said. "Saw kids were in trouble. Didn't really think about it. That was it." That was her entire reason for crossing the galaxy and facing down a war fleet. She got the ping. She saw children were in danger. She came. I have spent my career studying civilizations. I have read the philosophies of species older than stars. And in 80 years of watching humanity, I, like everyone else, dismissed them as primitive, emotional, and reckless. I was wrong. We were all wrong. They are not reckless. They are ready. Every single one of them, at all times, is ready to go to war for a stranger. Not because they are commanded to. Not because they are designed for it. Because something in their nature, their history, their magnificent and terrifying stubbornness, made them unable to hear a cry for help and do nothing. The galaxy spent 80 years asking the wrong question about humanity. We kept asking, why are they so aggressive? We should have been asking, what are they so aggressive about? The answer is you. Whoever you are, whatever you are, if you scream loud enough, they will come. And they will bring everything they have, and they will not stop until you are safe or they are gone. I am sending this account to every species in the Galactic Concord. Consider it a correction. Consider it a warning. Consider it the truth that we were all too arrogant to see. The humans are not a minor species. They are not young. They are not primitive. They are the only civilization in this galaxy that built itself around a single, extraordinary promise, that no one, anywhere, would ever cry out into the darkness and hear only silence. Be grateful. Be very, very grateful that they made that promise to everyone and not just to themselves. This is Commander Vaeth Solanor of the Cathari Diplomatic Conclave, and I am alive because a 67-year-old freight captain and 10,000 strangers decided that my people mattered. I will never forget it, neither should you.